All right, welcome into this week's Panther-Lair Show. I always end up finding myself doing something else before the show starts, and sometimes I get caught up in whatever I was doing. And in this case, I was tweeting about the Pro Football Hall of Fame and Heisman Trophy winners and things like that. Somebody tweeted Ricky Williams' stats from when he won the Heisman Trophy at Texas. Was that 2004 or something? No, it wasn't 2004. It was before that, 1990, whatever it was. I don't care. And so I replied with, James Conner's stats from 2014, his sophomore year when he rushed for almost 1,800 yards and scored 26 touchdowns. Some of the numbers are comparable between Ricky Williams and James Conner. I don't necessarily think James Conner should have won the Heisman Trophy in 2014, but it's funny. You can do a lot of funny things with numbers. You can compare numbers a lot and do some funny things and make some funny comparisons sometimes if you are so inclined. So I get distracted before I start the podcast doing that. And I actually just tweeted, if you're following me on Twitter here on Tuesday night, I just tweeted, I probably should stop tweeting and go start the show. So here we are. It's the Panther-Lair Show for this week. First Panther-Lair Show of 2021. Welcome to the new year. It seems like a long time since we've gotten together. Lots happened since then. New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. That's about it. No basketball games. No coaches hired. A whole lot of nothing has been happening since then, and yet I feel like we've got a whole lot to talk about. First, I have to remember what we talked about last week on the final Panther-Lair Show of 2020, and I don't remember what we talked about, so hopefully we won't repeat any topics, but I feel like there's always something to talk about. There's always something different or new to talk about in the world of pit sports, good or bad, whether it's newsworthy or not. I think we can always find a topic, and I like to think that that's sort of what we provide for you here. People say to me sometimes, how can you do an hour of pit sports talk every week? Like, how can you come up with things to talk about for an hour every week? And really, it's kind of 2 hours because we also do the Panthers Insider Show on 93.7 The Fan every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. In addition to our Panther-Lair Show, our live stream and our podcast here on Tuesday nights at 8:30 on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And sometimes people will say that, but I don't know where you can come up with things to talk about, particularly if it's in an off season. There's no spring camp or there's no training camp. It's not a recruiting sort of high activity time of year. And people say, like, how can you find things to talk about? And I don't know. I mean, there's always something to talk about. Football and basketball alone will always provide us with something to talk about. There's 85 scholarship guys on the football roster. There's 13 scholarship players on the basketball roster. There's coaching staffs. There are games to reflect on. There are a bunch of different position groups you can look at on football and basketball. In the basketball season now, even if it doesn't feel like it, even though they haven't played a game in 2 weeks. We're actually in the basketball season. So, I mean, there's always something to talk about. And sure enough, we've got plenty to talk about here on Tuesday night for this week's Panther-Lair Show. We got to start off, of course, give our shout-outs. Homefieldapparel.com. You know them. I've got my Rainbow Warriors sweatshirt on, my Hawaii sweatshirt. It is still the softest sweatshirt that I own. It's one of the coolest sweatshirts that I own with this sweet Hawaii Rainbow Warriors design on it. Homefieldapparel.com is the website that you really need to go to check out. They've got a great pit collection. I don't have one of their pit shirts on underneath tonight, but I've got a couple of their pit t-shirts. Super soft, super comfortable t-shirts. They fit really well. They hold their shape, and they've got great logos and great designs on them. I mean, you have to check it out. I can't do it justice with the description, although I will say they have a shirt that says simply 13-9. And that kind of says it all, I think. I don't think I need to elaborate on that one. So go check their stuff out at homefieldapparel.com and look for their pit collection or look for their collection for any schools. I mean, you're going to find a lot of good stuff at Homefield Apparel. They make a high-quality product, and that's one of the strongest endorsements that I can really offer. I mean, they get great-looking, great-feeling, high-quality T-shirts and sweatshirts and all kinds of other things. I mean, you got to go check it out. Homefieldapparel.com. They support us. You should go support them. Of course, having a beer tonight, we've got our RX. We always like to drink RX from Emsworth, gluten-free brewery out there if you're into that kind of thing, by choice or otherwise. and you're looking for good craft beer options, go check out Arcs. This is not a sponsored bit. I keep saying this. Maybe I'm hoping they will give us a sponsored bit. Maybe they will become a sponsor for the podcast, but I'm going to keep drinking their beer. I guess I'm giving them free advertising. So this is a poor job of salesmanship by me to sell them ad space on the podcast. But hopefully, if you're into gluten-free beer, you're looking for other craft beer options that maybe don't have gluten, Arcs is one of the best gluten-free breweries in the country, from what I've been able to read, and we're fortunate we have them right here in Western Pennsylvania. I'm drinking the winter ale. You can't find this. This is all gone. Go get some of their other stuff, their ambers, their lagers, their IPAs. This is good, though. So hopefully you've got something nice and delicious to drink tonight as we talk about Pitt sports. And I guess we start with the basketball team. They haven't played since December 22nd. It's been since the Louisville game. They've had 2 games postponed since then, a game at Duke and a game against Notre Dame on consecutive Saturdays, called off, and or not. I forget if it was on consecutive. I forget what the dates even were supposed to be for those games. But both games not canceled, but postponed due to COVID issues. Seems like both on Pitt's side, although the Panthers are kind of clear of those issues. They're clear enough that they're able to play a game because now the ACC took Pitt's game at Syracuse, which was scheduled for February 13th, and moved it up to this Wednesday, tomorrow. If you're watching the live stream here on Tuesday night. Obviously it's Wednesday the 6th if you're listening to the podcast later in the week. And so they're clear enough of the COVID issues that they're able to play a game, but they don't have a full roster. Jeff Capel said they could have 2 or 3 guys who don't make this trip to Syracuse. And the basketball program and their social media feed has been funny. They've been putting out some photos from practice this week, which obviously would indicate, if you could see a guy in a picture at practice, then he must be good to go. And they put up a picture of Xavier Johnson and Audice Toney getting on the plane to fly to Syracuse here on Tuesday. So, obviously those guys are good. So, what we've been able to piece together, because, Capel wouldn't give up the names of the guys who may or may not make it there. But Xavier Johnson, Audice Toney, Abdul Kareem Coulibaly, Terrell Brown, and William Jeffress apparently all seem to be okay. Or at least good to go for this game. Now, who knows beyond that? It's anybody's guess. Justin Champagnie's not going to be back. He's still in that 6 to 8 week window that started a couple weeks ago. So I guess everyone's made this joke. If there's any silver lining to these postponements, it's that they're getting closer to Champagnie's return. They're playing fewer games without Justin Champagnie. Now, if the ACC keeps moving games from later on down the schedule back into this window when Champagnie's out, that's not going to help things. That's going to, get you more games without Champagnie. You'd like to have as few games as possible without your best player. But he's not going to be out. But there's still 7 other guys that are up in the air. Nike Sabande, Ethiel Horton, Noah Collier, John Hughley, Femi Odekale, Maxim Madison, who I don't think has played at all. Maybe he played in one game or a couple minutes here or there or something. Gerald Drumgoole would be the other one. And it's not like we're suspicious of all those guys potentially being out, but at this point we have no confirmation that those guys made the trip to Syracuse, so it could be any 2 of them or 3 if it was on the high side of Capel's estimate. And here we go again, just kind of coming back to what we've said certainly since the beginning of the basketball season, what we've said since midway through the football season, really what we've said since the beginning of the football season. There was that transition of over the summer when I didn't think any games were going to be played. And I said that on this podcast. I said it on Panther-Lair.com. I said it on Twitter and all those different places where you say things. I didn't think any games were going to be played. I didn't think the football season was going to happen. And then it did. But while it was happening, there was always the risk. There was always the potential. There was always that impending doom right around the corner that the season could be taken away at any point. And that always existed there throughout the football season. And even if we got lulled to sleep a little bit by mid-season, you got through the Notre Dame game and the Florida State game, and they're 4-4. They've played 8 games out of 11. Hey, things look good. They're in good shape. And then that Georgia Tech game gets postponed. Virginia Tech game, they're playing without 16 guys or 18 guys or whatever it was. And all of a sudden you're brought back to reality of, hey, nothing is guaranteed. Even though we'd seen it all across the country, games getting postponed and games getting canceled and teams, losing multiple weeks of games because of these things. We'd seen it all around, but Pitt had made it through so far. They danced through the raindrops. You know what I mean? It was all pouring, but not a drop on Pitt. They were getting through it, and then it just a downpour. And it got them soaked, and they ended up finishing the season playing all 11 games. But that for me opened my eyes and kind of put me back on track of realizing how quickly things can be taken away. Put me back on. It reminded me of how not guaranteed the basketball season is. And I mean, at this point, what we're seeing right now, where Pitt has already had 2 games postponed and a third game moved. They've got this game against Florida State on Saturday. Pitt and Syracuse are playing on Wednesday because Syracuse's planned game against Florida State had to be canceled because Florida State has COVID issues. Or not canceled, but postponed. And so Florida State is dealing with COVID issues right now. It's possible they could be good to go by the end of this week to play on Saturday. I would say that game is very much up in the air. And we really kind of have to approach every game saying that game is very much up in the air. And they're somewhere in the ACC offices. There are guys and girls sitting around trying to figure out how to make these schedules work. And I don't envy their jobs. They're drinking a lot more than I am. I can promise you that. Because, you're moving games, you're postponing games when you have to. And then you're trying to find ways to make those games up. I think this Pitt-Syracuse game is being played on Wednesday because they were like, all right, Syracuse came open. Pitt hasn't had a game in 2 weeks. We're going to have to try and find a way to fit 2 makeup games in for Pitt. 2 so far. There are going to be more that are added to it, I'm sure. We have to find a way to fit 2 makeup games in for Pitt. Move that Syracuse game back here. Have Pitt and Syracuse play on Wednesday. Pitt's been off. They don't have another midweek game this week. Have Pitt and Syracuse play on Wednesday. That opens up that weekend of February 13th for Pitt and Syracuse, and we can maybe move more games around and figure something out there. And so even if Pitt doesn't play Florida State this weekend, maybe they get a different game on Saturday. Either a makeup of the Notre Dame or Duke game, although I think both of those teams have games this weekend. Maybe they can move something here, move something there, and then you can end up making up the Notre Dame game. Then you can end up making up the Duke game. I mean, it's one of the most complicated and frustrating puzzles I've ever seen, and I would never want to deal with it. I don't envy the people who are trying to deal with it because they're going to work like crazy. And not get a lot of sleep over the course of the next 2 months trying to get 20 conference games in for every team in the ACC. And it's not going to happen. I would put the over-under at ACC teams that play 20 conference games, 1.5, 0.5. You know what I mean? I don't know if any team in this conference is going to play 20 ACC games. It just seems unlikely to me. Unless, as someone said, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, maybe they extend the season. Yeah, I mean, and that would be the one possibility for finding a way to get a full season played. Or a full 20 games, I should say, in the regular season. It just seems highly unlikely to me. And that's the reality of it right now. And it's not just Pitt. I mean, you're seeing games all over the place. Again, Pitt is playing at Syracuse on Wednesday because Florida State couldn't play at Syracuse on Wednesday. It's all over the conference. It's all over the country. And teams are getting shut down and pausing activities. And it's not just men's basketball. You look at the women's basketball game. How many games have they had postponed? The Pitt women's basketball team, they had to pause activities. You see other sports having to pause activities. This is 2020 and now into 2021. College athletics, where you don't have the option to put these teams in a bubble somewhere. They're going to do it, I guess, in Indianapolis for the Final Four or for March Madness. Okay. I'm really interested to see how that works out. I mean, teams that make the championship game, are they going to have to live in Indianapolis for 3 weeks? At that point, colleges are probably all going to be remote and going over Zoom for classes anyway. So why not? The heck difference does it make if you're sitting in a hotel room in Indianapolis or you're sitting in a hotel room in the city of your college? What difference does it make? You might as well. But that's if we actually even get to the NCAA tournament. I don't know. There really is a lot of uncertainty about it. And it's not about, it's not about a lot of the things that people try to make it about when they talk about these things. What it's about is, how many games are we going to get to watch? How many games is this team going to get to play? How much are we going to see this team grow and develop over the course of the season? How much growth are they really going to be able to do over the course of a season that's played in this fashion, in this manner? With, a bunch of the roster missing and guys sitting out and all that stuff. Not being able to play. It's crazy. It's craziness. And it's, it goes back to last March. It's only gotten crazier as time has gone on, and it's only going to keep getting crazier through the rest of this month and the rest of next month. And then we'll see if we get into March, if you start having teams do what they did in football and just opt out of the postseason. Why are we going to go spend a weekend or 2 weekends in Indianapolis? That's not, especially if you're a major conference team. If you're, Robert Morris and you're looking at, all right, we can win our league and we can go out to Indianapolis for a weekend and come back. All right, we'll do that. But if you're a major conference team with a decent chance to get out of the first weekend, but you're probably not going to go beyond that, I don't know. Maybe you still do it. What about the NIT? Do you go to the NIT? If the NIT says we're going to do the same thing, we're going to put everybody in one city. We're going to bring you all to Houston. We're going to bring you all to Denver. Or we're going to take you all to take your pick. I don't even know what would be a Boston? No. You need a good, Indianapolis type city. Nashville? Maybe Nashville. We're going to bring you to Nashville for the NIT. Are you going? You going to Nashville for the NIT? Maybe if they played the NIT like they play the conference tournaments and played it over basically 6 days. I just boom, 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 and just bang it all out and be done with it. Maybe you would consider it then. But going to one of these places for 2 weeks or 3 weeks to play in the NIT, I don't know. I think if I don't know, it'll be interesting to see what teams decide to stick with, to accept postseason invitations, and what teams decide to go the route that a lot of football teams did, Pitt and a bunch of other schools in the ACC and a bunch of schools across the country, and say, nah, man, we're done. We're good. Because I think it was, with opting out of the bowl games like Pitt did, and a lot of these schools did, I don't think it was just about, why are we going to spend the money to go on this trip that's not going to be it's not really going to be any different from any other regular road trip we do. We're not going to have a whole week of experiences or anything like that. Why are we going to spend the money to go play in this exhibition game and go through all this stuff again? I don't think it was about that as much of it. It was about, should we, put the players and coaches through this for another 3 weeks or whatever it is. Now, I could even see teams opting out before the conference tournaments this year in basketball, because they say, why are we going to go through another week or 2 weeks of the quarantining and the testing and the contact tracing and the losing it all without any real warning? All of a sudden, boom, we've got we hit a certain threshold, we can't play now, even though we tried to do everything we could. I don't know. It's tomorrow ain't promised to no one, right? And that's the case in sports right now. It's not promised. So it's wild, and it hasn't calmed down at all. It's been wild for a long time. Let's see here. Got a couple questions rolling in on the YouTube live stream. We appreciate everybody checking in at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Pitfan234 says, what do you make of Jordan Addison being the highest ranked wide receiver for a Heisman? I know he's really good, but didn't realize that good. Could he go for around 1,500 yards next year? So there's been some Heisman odds that have been released, early 2021 Heisman odds. And Jordan Addison's name has shown up on there, 2,500 to 1 or something like that. I mean, ridiculous odds. He's 23rd on the list or 25th on the list or something. And I'm surprised. I don't know how his name ended up there. I mean, he had an outstanding freshman season. But the thing is, and I'm writing about this on Panther-Lair.com this week, and you can find some interesting numbers about it. Addison, he's got a usage problem. The way they use him in this offense, and it's similar to Maurice French last season in 2019, where French set a Pitt record with 96 catches, set a Pitt single season reception record, and finished with 880 yards or something. He averaged 8.8 yards per catch. And it wasn't that he was playing poorly. He had an outstanding season. He had a great season. Jordan Addison had a great year this year. But Addison was fourth among Pitt's receivers with even 20 targets in yards per catch, because of the kind of routes they're asking him to run. And I think it's somewhat, I think with French last year and Addison this year, there's some thought of, all right, we're going to get you the ball in space, you make a man miss, and then you can run for big yards and all that kind of thing. And that's all well and good, but the plays just weren't designed well enough to pull that off. And if it was a screen pass, the blocking wasn't good enough, and getting the ball in space, it didn't work the way it was supposed to work. And so it was a lot of catch and tackle type stuff. And and we've talked a lot over the last 2 years about how in this Pitt offense, the passing game, the short passing game, at least is supposed to, if not replace the running game, accomplish some of the same goals that an effective running game would have. So a lot of 3-yard passes, 4-yard passes, things like that. And I think Addison caught those kinds of passes. I think Maurice French caught those kinds of passes last year. Just feeding him the ball over and over and over and over again. That's why Kenny Pickett ends up with 500 pass attempts and just barely 3,000 yards. It doesn't have a high yards per attempt or even high yards per completion. It wasn't a deep passing team. It wasn't a downfield passing team. That they stretched the field more this year than they did last year. I think Kenny Pickett was better on his vertical throws this year than he was last year. But it's still, there was still that need to not take pressure off the running game, but accomplish some of those goals that you would have for the running game, and use the short passing game to do it. And so I think that's going to limit what Addison's overall production can be. He's not, I don't, at least the way he was used this year. Now, if they expand his role and move him out of the slot, get him on the perimeter more, I think he's going to have more opportunities for longer catches, downfield catches. But I mean, Jared Wayne averaged more yards per catch than Jordan Addison did. Taysier Mack averaged more yards per catch than Jordan Addison did. These guys were lining up outside and finding opportunities to catch the ball downfield more than Addison was coming out of the slot. So, I don't think Jordan Addison's going to win the Heisman. I think he can have a great sophomore season. I expect him to have a great sophomore season. I don't know what kind of yardage total you circle. I don't know if he can be a 1,500-yard receiver. Simply because, for a few reasons. One, if his usage doesn't change, then I think his numbers are going to look the same, where it's, 10 yards per catch or less, but while still filling a very important role on the offense. And so it's, I do think it's a matter of usage that'll hold Addison's stats back. I thought another interesting thing about Pitt's wide receivers is, when you look at the percentage of the total targets, like who was getting the passes thrown to them. Sorry, I got to get my notes out. I had the thing flipped over. Like last year, in 2019, Maurice French had 25.8% of the total targets were thrown to him. 25.8% of the total passes were thrown to him. Taysier Mack was 23.3% of the total passes. So between the two of them, you're looking at almost 50% of the passes thrown went to just those two guys. And the next highest percentage of targets was Shockey Jacques-Louis at 7.7% of the passes were thrown to him. This year, you had 5 guys get more than 10% of the passes. Jared Wayne was 10.2%. Shockey was 11.0%. Taysier Mack was 12.2% of the passes. DJ Turner, 16.7%. And then Jordan Addison at 21.7%. They spread the ball around more this year than they did a year ago. And I think that's interesting. I think it's relevant. I think it's notable. And I think it's something I want to see if they continue next year. They have all those guys back other than DJ Turner. Unless there's a transfer here in the next week or two, or I guess potentially after the spring semester. All those guys are coming back. Addison, Mack, Jacques Louis, Jared Wayne. So that's 3 guys who commanded 10% or more of the targets in the passing game this past season. And they spread the ball around more, which I think will keep Jordan Addison or anybody from having superhuman, they're not going to have like Devontae Smith stats or Larry Fitzgerald stats or even Tyler Boyd stats. I don't know if they'll have a 1,000-yard receiver if they keep on this track. And I'm not saying it's a bad approach to spread the ball around. I think you've got some versatile talents and maybe even some guys they could use more than they did this past season. But you're not going to end up with one guy running away with a bunch of stats if you spread the ball around like that. And I think it is a good thing, a good idea to spread the ball around. And I mean, you've also got Lucas Krull coming back. You want to try and get him maybe not a 10% target share, but somewhere close to it. I would think you'd want to get him in the 8 or 9% area. If you take DJ Turner out, that's 16.7% of the targets. Let's say the other guys all kind of stay around the same area, or let's say Addison, Mack, Jacques Louis, and Wayne all kind of split that. This is about 54% of the target share, right? And then you've got another 45%, 46% or so to work with to spread around to, the other receivers, and then the tight ends and the running backs. And you're gonna get the ball to the running backs. Vincent Davis is gonna get a share of the targets. Maybe Izzy Benekanda, if he's ready to contribute more as a sophomore than he did as a freshman. I think you're going to get the ball to Krull, and you're going to try and get the ball a little bit more to Daniel Marega. I think those 2 guys have some potential, maybe even Kai Wright. I think the tight ends will command a larger target share next year. They should command a larger target share next year, particularly with Lucas Krull back in the mix. I'll tell you who needs a bigger percentage of targets next season. I tell you who needs his numbers to go up next season. Take a drink of beer. You try and think, who do you think I'm going to say should get more targets next year than they got this year? Who was underutilized? You can't say DJ Turner because he's not coming back. Who was underutilized? Jaylen Barden. 10 targets. Jaylen Barden only had 10 targets last season. It's not a lot, and most of them, I think he had 5 against Virginia Tech when Jordan Addison was out. So he had, I think it was a Virginia Tech game. 5 targets in that game. Half of his targets came in that game. He caught all 5 of those passes in the Virginia Tech game for 65 yards and a touchdown. Finished the season with 7 catches for 140 yards and 1 touchdown. 7 catches on 10 targets. You can argue with a 70% completion rate, 70% catch rate, 20 yards per reception. You can argue with that. Now, granted, he had a 68-yard catch in the first game against Austin Peay. You take that out, he finishes with like 6 catches for 72 yards and a touchdown. That's not a bad stat line. If you put up 6 for 72 and a touchdown in one game, you had a good game. You impacted the game positively and played well for your team. And that's what DJ Turner did over the course of this past season. He had 7 receptions. Like say 1 was a touchdown, and that was one of 5 of his catches that gained a first down. So 5 out of his 7 catches gained a first down. Half the time they threw to Jaylen Barden, 5 out of his 10 targets resulted in a first down or a touchdown. I know he's a freshman. I know he was still learning the offense, probably still trying to find his way. It's always an adjustment for freshmen. It's the truly exceptional who are ready to step in and contribute right away, like an Addison or Tyler Boyd or whoever. But Jaylen Barden's got to be on the field more next year. You look at his speed. I know he's not the biggest guy, but he can make plays. And he made plays last season. And I don't want to hear that he alligator armed a ball against Clemson or something. He's a freshman. If that was the only pass he misplayed, if that was the only one that, went awry on him, I'll take it. You look at the overall, again, a small sample size, but look at the body of work. I think you move Jaylen Barden up. I mean, we're talking about DJ Turner having 16.7% of the targets last season. Move Jaylen Barden up into his spot. Move Jaylen Barden into that target share. Give him the ball. All right? Put him out there with Addison and Mack, or Addison and Wayne, or all four of them, and mix Shockey into the group as well. You know, I think Barden's got to be part of the offense next season. I think he can really make things happen. He's a guy that, as I looked at more of the numbers, and I know it's a small sample size. It's only 10 targets. It's only 7 receptions. It's only 140 yards. It's only 5 first downs. It's only 1 touchdown. But I mean, the numbers, and you watch him play, I mean, it's impressive. It makes me want to see what he can do with more opportunities. So he's my guy that I'm circling for next year, who needs to be a part of it. A heavier, have a larger role in the offense in the in 2021. Let's see here. Some questions and comments here. Dale Gribble says, DJ Turner going to a different college? Can't see him getting drafted. Yeah, he's getting drafted, Dale. DJ Turner's I don't know if he's getting drafted, but he's going to go to the NFL. He signed with an agent. He's gone. When you look at guys who are gone, for sure, let me bring up the list of the seniors who are not returning. Turner's one of them. Alex Kessman signed with an agent this week. Actually, he signed with the agent who represents Justin Tucker from the Ravens, one of the best kickers in the NFL. So let me find the list. So there were 10 seniors who were introduced on senior day. DJ Turner, Jason Pinnock, Rashad Weaver, Phil Campbell, Bryce Hargrove, Alex Kessman, DeMar Hamlin, Kenny Pickett, Jimmy Morrissey, Patrick Jones. Of those 10, Kenny Pickett and Phil Campbell have announced that they're going to come back and play another year. We'll talk about those guys in a second. Actually, it was the night before signing day. We were live on the Panther-Lair Show, and Kenny Pickett made his announcement. I don't think he did that on purpose, but, man, Kenny, you could have given us some better timing on that. But I think the other 8 guys are all locked up and ready to go. DJ Turner, Jason Pinnock, Rashad Weaver, Bryce Hargrove, Alex Kessman, DeMar Hamlin, Jimmy Morrissey, and Patrick Jones. Those 8 are not returning. They've all, I believe, signed with agents. If they haven't signed with agents, they're committed to play in senior bowls and things like that, and they'll probably be signing soon if they haven't already. Those guys are gone. They're not returning. So you can kind of cross them off your expectations list for 2021. A brief shout out to Jimmy Morrissey, winner of the Burlsworth trophy this week, presented annually to the, I think they say, the most outstanding player in college football who was once a walk-on. And so Jimmy Morrissey beat out 2 really good players, a wide receiver from BYU who's really productive, and a linebacker at Arkansas who's really, really good. And that award is basically the best award a walk-on could get. I mean, sort of specific to walk-ons. I guess a walk-on could go on scholarship and play himself into the Biletnikoff or even the Heisman or something like that. But in terms of, among walk-ons, I mean, that's the highest honor, is the Burlsworth Trophy. It's been given out, I think this is the 11th year they gave it out. Baker Mayfield won it in back-to-back years. You read down the list, and it's guys that you've heard about, guys you've probably seen on College Game Day because they've had stories written about them as being former walk-ons who are excelling. And so congratulations to Jimmy Morrissey. I mean, think about that guy for a second. He comes to Pitt as a walk-on in 2016. He redshirts. He believes in himself, but I mean, how many people believe in a walk-on, He becomes a 4-year starter at center. You rarely ever have a 4-year starter at center. And you really never see a guy become a 4-year starter at center after redshirting his first year as a walk-on. That's pretty highly unlikely. I mean, I think if there's a story that everybody in college football can get behind, if there's a story that every college football fan can appreciate and enjoy, it's the walk-on who makes good. You know what I mean? It's the walk-on who excels, who plays himself not just into a scholarship, but into a starting role, a contributing role. Jimmy Morrissey was 2-time captain. 4-year starting center, all ACC player, Burlsworth Trophy winner, Remington Award candidate. and he's in Blue Gold Society and all ACC academic team. I mean, like that's. I'm not going to wax too poetic about it. I'm not going to get too sappy about it. But for all the things that we sort of talk every day about what's wrong with college football, I mean, that's what's right. Like, plug the kids' ears for a second, but that's the good shit. Like that's what's right with college football, is when you have a story like that. And it doesn't just have to be the walk-on who plays himself into a starting job or anything like that. Guys who persevere, kids who become adults, young men who become adults and grow over the course of 5 years. And you look at what Jimmy Morrissey and grow through their own sort of dedication and motivation and ambition and drive. And a walk-on's not going to make it if he doesn't have drive. I mean, if you go to a college football practice and you watch, walk-ons, they'll get yelled at, but that's usually about the bulk of it. They're not going to get much more than that. And coaches will coach guys and they'll coach them hard, but I mean, it's not an easy life for a walk-on. I remember a long time ago when I first started on this job, writing like a big 3-part series on walk-ons. I talked to a bunch of different guys. Connor Lee was one I talked to a lot. I forget who else I talked to. I talked to Austin Ransom. I forget. That's a name from the past, Austin Ransom. But yeah, Connor was a big part of that. Connor, the Pitt kicker, who went on scholarship. But I mean, it's a hard life. And they've gradually sort of given walk-ons more things, access to training table and that kind of thing. But it's a hard life. It's an unforgiving life. I mean, you are a tackling dummy out there. And just for a walk-on to last 5 years or 4 years as a walk-on is an amazing amount of perseverance. Because they can easily tell you, like, get out of here, man. We don't even want to pay the money to wash your uniform. We don't want to pay for the water it takes for you to take a shower. Get out of here. Leave. You're off the team. You have to work hard for a pretty unforgiving role. And, for those guys who work so hard, who do so much, who elevate themselves to, like I said, not only go on scholarship, but become a contributor, a leader of the team. And that's what Jimmy Morrissey did. You got to tip your cap to it. Because it really is. I mean, those are the success stories. I mean, forget your what's his name from that Marky Mark played in the movie about the Eagles, Vince Falafel or Vince Papali or whatever his name is. I mean, like that's a nice story. But I mean, this is a kid who's 18 saying, I'm going away from home. I'm going 4 or 5 hours or further away from home, and I'm not going to even be on scholarship, but I'm going to play football. I'm going to work my tail off, and I'm going to hope that I get a shot. I'm going to hope that someone notices me and appreciates what I'm doing. And that's what happened for Jimmy Morrissey. And he worked like crazy for 5 years, here in the respect of his coaches, here in the respect of his teammates, here in the respect of a national award committee, And so kudos to him. We got majorly sidetracked there. But you know what? Actually, Jimmy Morrissey winning the Burlsworth trophy is something to get sidetracked on. I think that's a worthwhile topic to sidetrack on real quick. But so what was I saying? We were talking about seniors who are leaving and seniors who are coming back. Obviously, the two who decided to return, Phil Campbell and Kenny Pickett. I mean, those are pretty big. Pretty big additions for Pitt. Pretty big to have those two guys come back. And I think we talked about Pickett in the past. Obviously, you get your quarterback to return for another year to be your 4th year as a starter, and put off that transition that you have eventually coming toward you. I mean, that at the end of the tunnel, there is going to be a transition to a new quarterback. Whether that guy's a sophomore or a junior or a freshman, whatever it is, there's a transition coming at quarterback. You're going to have to eventually have that day of reckoning. But you put it off for one more year. You put it off for just a little bit longer, and you get another year with Kenny Pickett. I think that's big. Phil Campbell, though, I don't think we should overlook Phil Campbell, and I think we have overlooked Phil Campbell quite a bit, particularly this season. I think he played really well in 2019, and I think we gave him some credit for that, but we all wanted to talk about Kylan Johnson. And then coming into this year, I think there was a lot of hype for Cam Bright, a lot of high expectations for Cam Bright. And then you have the breakout emergence of Servassier Dennis, who looked like one of Pitt's best linebackers, maybe the best linebacker on the team for a good portion of this season, and kind of buried there. And then we'd also talk about the middle linebacker position and how that wasn't really producing or contributing much at all. And kind of like sort of hidden in plain sight and ignored and overlooked is Phil Campbell, who I think had just another really solid season playing star linebacker. He's a good player, converted safety, played running back in high school and safety in high school, and moves to linebacker in college. And I think he's just been really good. I think you bring him back, and we're going to spend a lot of time this offseason talking about the pieces Pitt has to replace on defense, at cornerback, at obviously defensive end, at safety. Well, now they don't have anything they need to replace at linebacker. I mean, they've got Campbell back. They've got Bright back. They've got Dennis back. Chase Pine is coming back for another year. Wendell Davis will be back after getting, the starting middle linebacker last year before he got hurt. Brandon George, who became the backup middle linebacker to Chase Pine after Wendell Davis got hurt, he's back. And then you've got, this trio of freshmen in A.J. Roberts, the middle linebacker, and then the two outside guys, Bengali Kamara and Solomon DeShields. I think Kamara and DeShields are going to contribute in 2021. And, I mean, their chances of, the reps decreased, the available reps decreased when Phil Campbell decided to return. But, I mean, those guys are going to make an impact, and they're going to be really good in their careers at Pitt. Linebacker, and it's funny, I would have to go back and find some of my 3-2-1 columns from probably like August or July. And maybe even right here on this podcast, we ranked... I remember we ranked the position groups. Do you remember this? It was before the season. We ranked the position groups. And I forget where I had the linebackers, but I said that, I felt like the linebackers were the group that had the biggest potential to jump by the end of the season. And I think that happened. I mean, because we look at that group now, and it looks like a position of strength. I'm probably like you, not all that high on Chase Pine as the middle linebacker. Didn't think he was great, but you bring him back. He's another experienced guy. You bring Wendell Davis back, who won the starting job out of training camp last year. And then you bring Brandon George back. You got A.J. Roberts coming along. Servassier Dennis could play in the middle. If that's your best three is Dennis, Bright, and Campbell, then yeah, Servassier Dennis can play middle linebacker. Maybe he makes less of an impact there than he would at one of the outside spots, but he can learn. He can play there. I think he's shown that. So now all of a sudden you've got, a position group that's deep, it's talented, and it looks like one of the strengths on the team. I mean, I think you would put the linebackers pretty high if we were going to rank the position groups right now, and we're not, because we're going to wait and see how things shake out and get through spring camp and into the summer and all that stuff. But if we were going to rank the position groups right now, I don't know if you'd put anything above linebacker. Linebacker might be the number one position group on this team. And that's, boosted considerably by Phil Campbell deciding to return. I don't know where you would put this group if Campbell didn't come back. If it was just Bright and Dennis and those guys. Still pretty high. Probably not outside the top three, but maybe you put quarterback higher, with Kenny Pickett. But with Campbell back, I think your depth becomes such that, I would put the linebackers above the quarterbacks. It's funny how the perception can change, really in the course of 1 year. Other seniors who are coming back, A.J. Davis, Lucas Krull, who we talked about with the tight ends potentially making an impact, Kayshawn Camp, Taysir Mack coming back for another year, Trey Tipton. Just going through the scholarship guys, Chase Pine, I mentioned. Cal Adamitis, don't sleep on that. You have an experienced long snapper back. You talk about a guy who's a 4-year starter. That's what Cal Adamitis has been. Now he's going to be a 5-year starter, as I believe he started as a true freshman. So you're looking at a 5-year starter in Cal Adamitis at long snapper. You can dismiss it, you can ignore it, you can overlook it, but hey, they always say about long snapper, it's a position you don't notice until they screw up, right? Well, how many times have you noticed Cal Adamitis over the past 4 years? I'll tell you, there was was it Duke in 2017, that Duke game when Darren Hall had all the rushing yards? I think Adamitis lost his helmet at the line of scrimmage and still ran down the field and I think he might have even made the tackle. He took a penalty for it because once you lose your helmet, you're supposed to get the heck out of the way. You know what I mean? Don't stay on the field of play so you don't get your skull crushed in. But I think he might have even made the tackle. He drew a penalty, but I think he might have made the tackle. And you could see him because he had that long hair flowing. So Cal Adamitis, I mean, that might be the only time I can remember hearing his name called. Yeah, I guess 2018 with the Penn State game, I feel like there were a few debacles on special teams, but I don't think they were largely on the part of the snapper. I think those issues fell somewhere else. But I can't say I've heard Cal Adamitis' name very much over the last 4 years, which might be one of the highest points of praise for a long snapper. So getting him back is good. Chase Pine, like I said, we mentioned about other seniors, scholarship guys coming back. Jake Zielinskis and John Patrician both went on scholarship prior to last season. Patrician at linebacker, Zielinskis at kind of like a fullback tight end role. More depth at those spots. I didn't even mention Patrician at linebacker, but I mean that's more depth at that spot. A veteran player, an experienced guy coming back to provide more depth at outside linebacker. And then Keldrick Wilson would be another one. He's the came to Pitt as a grad transfer offensive lineman, transferred from Hampton this past season, or came in last summer, I guess I should say. And, I mean, didn't really play, didn't really contribute a whole lot. I think they took a 1-year flyer on him, thinking maybe there was something there. Turned out there really wasn't, but he's not going to cost you a scholarship spot this year if he comes back. So bring him back and see what happens. The worst thing that happens is you have another, tackle. Offensive tackle in your depth. Best thing that happens is he really grows into an ACC level player and gives you more competition at the tackle spots. So those are the guys coming back. And then the other one, and I don't think this would really count. I have to talk to some people to see how this guy fits into the scholarship counts, and it's Damari Mathis. So Damari Mathis should have been a senior this past season. 2020 was his senior year, eligibility-wise. And obviously he got hurt in the offseason, got hurt in like August, had to miss the whole season, didn't play at all. And so that would go as his redshirt year. So he would enter 2021 as a redshirt senior. Because of that, I don't know if he would count against the 85 scholarships this year. I kind of think he would. I kind of think if he had not redshirted in 2020, then he would be out of eligibility. And so he would come back for his free year and not count this year. But because he redshirted, he still has eligibility left. So I don't think I do think he would count this year. I don't think he would be using his free year of eligibility that the NCAA gave to everybody who played this year. So I think in 2021, Damari Mathis comes back. He counts as part of the 85-man scholarships. But then if the NCAA proceeds the way I expect them to, where guys who played or were on a roster in 2020 get a free year once their eligibility is up, then in theory, Damari Mathis could play this year as a redshirt senior in 2021, expire his eligibility, and then have a free year to use in 2022 if he wanted to come back. I don't know if he's going to do that. I don't think he'll do that. I think he'll play in 2021 and then try to go to the NFL. Right now, I don't care what happens in 2022. I'm interested in 2021, and I think having Damari Mathis back for 2021 is a huge boost to the cornerback ranks. I think getting Damari Mathis back, actually, there was a conversation on the message boards this week about all the different position groups. Are they, projected for 2021, same, better, or worse? And that was a good topic. I got it in on the conversation. I'll probably steal it for a few content items, to be honest with you. And I think having Damari Mathis come back puts the cornerbacks at same at worst. And I actually think it might be an improvement. Because if you look at the corners last year, you had Jason Pinnock as an experienced guy, and then a bunch of inexperienced guys, Marquez Williams and A.J. Woods, and then eventually Rashad Battle got on the field. Eric Hallett had to move over and take snaps at corner. These were your corners. And it was a less than ideal depth situation. This year, Pinnock's gone, but you got Mathis back. So, I mean, that's a wash at worst, and it might even be an improvement depending on what you think of Mathis versus Pinnock. But then all those other guys, Marquez Williams and A.J. Woods and Rashad Battle and even Eric Howard if he has to do it, they've all got a lot of experience. So they're better, or they should be better this year than they were last year. So I think that's an improvement. I think the corners actually should be better this year than they were in 2020. And then you add in the freshmen. I mean, I've been on record about Khalil Anderson. I think he's going to be a stud. I think he's going to be really good at Pitt, and I think he's going to play as a freshman. I don't know if he's going to start or anything like that, but I think he's going to get on the field and contribute and be a part of this defense and probably be in the rotation at cornerback. So, I think the corners are an upgrade, but it's largely because of Damari Mathis coming back. If you didn't have Mathis coming back, it would be a drop off. Even though I think those other guys who really got, their first real playing time in 2020 should be better in 21. But you add Mathis into that group, and I think that's huge. I think that's a big addition. I think that does a lot for the cornerback group. All right, let's get a couple questions before we head out here and see what people are talking about, what they're thinking. A lot of questions here on the live stream. Appreciate it with everybody jumping in here. Let's see. Russell Amakuchi says, do you think Narduzzi will make any changes to the offense for next year? Obviously, it seems like Whipple will be back, but they have to do something, right? Yeah, I mean, I would have expected. I thought there was going to be a change. You know what I mean? I thought Mark Whipple would be gone. I didn't think Mark Whipple will be back in 2021. But with Kenny Pickett returning, I think that's a pretty clear indication that Mark Whipple's not going anywhere. I think he's sticking around for another year. At this point, I don't know if there's going to be any more staff changes on the team, and we'll see. They still have the coaches convention coming up in the next week or two, although it's going to be different this year because it's virtual. But it seems, I don't know. I hate to sit here and say, I think it's status quo. They're not going to have any more staff changes, but it sort of looks like that right now. We'll see. We'll see how it develops. PittFan234, is Pitt done reaching out to transfers? I could see a wide receiver, a defensive back, or a defensive line still, maybe. I don't think they're done. I don't know if they'll get any more transfers, but I don't think they're done talking to them. I think you always keep those avenues of communication open, and you see what kind of numbers you're going to have available, what kind of spots you're going to have available. But you keep talking to those guys because you never know who might really fit in and be able to help you. So I think any of those positions you mentioned are worth exploring. I mean, I think almost any position is worth exploring right now, honestly, in the transfer market. You're probably not going to find or really want a grad transfer quarterback. Linebacker's a little bit jammed up, like we talked about, unless you can get a really talented middle linebacker. But yeah, D-line, DB, sure. Receiver, sure. Running back room is pretty crowded, but tight end's always tight end. But yeah, I think they're always keep an eye on guys. Dale Gribble says Tyler Boyd was probably the funnest player to watch next to LaShawn McCoy and Dion Lewis. Yeah, Boyd was a blast. I mean, it was fun watching Tyler Boyd. He was really, really good at Pitt. An outstanding player, and I don't think we overlook him. I think Tyler Boyd and Antonio Bryant probably don't get as much love from Pitt fans as they should. I don't think Pitt fans talk about them as sort of reverently as they should, but those two guys were both pretty outstanding at Pitt. Tim Fairley says, what's your take on the Jordan Addison time for a change tweet? Yeah, if you missed this was big stuff. I think it was over the weekend, around 2:30 in the morning one night, Jordan Addison tweeted time for a change. I think Rashad Battle actually replied, yep, or something like that. I mean, I've said before, it's dangerous when you try and read into the tweets of college kids. I mean, it really is. I don't think Jordan Addison's going anywhere. He later deleted the tweet. I don't think he was giving anything away, and all the replies to the tweet were like Pitt fans saying, please don't leave, and Maryland fans saying, please come to Maryland. I mean, like, I know they're football players to us, but they're still college kids. Who knows what they might be tweeting about? Sometimes a college kid tweets that stuff, and it does mean that he's trying to transfer or something like that. A bunch of other times, it doesn't mean that at all. Save yourself the frustration, the anguish, the despair, and just try not to read too much into those things. And maybe I don't know what this will turn out to be. I don't think it's going to turn out to be anything. And again, he deleted the tweet. I have no indication that he's trying to leave. But, save yourself the frustration. Pit Parade, so what do your sources tell you about Jaylen Barden? What is his ceiling? I haven't asked anybody what is his ceiling, but I think there's a lot of optimism about him at Pitt. I think they believe he can be really good. They were really excited that they signed, in that class. They were really excited that they signed Jaylen Barden and Jordan Addison. They thought both of those guys, there were people at Pitt who told me they thought that Jaylen Barden and Jordan Addison were, better than, at least as good as anybody on their roster in 2019, receiver-wise. And I think you saw little flashes of it from Barden. Obviously, you saw a lot from You saw a lot from Addison. You saw a little bit from Barden. And I think you can get a lot more out of Barden going forward. Nicholas Temperio, what are the chances that Brandon Honorable and or Marco Fugar make it to Pitt? I don't think they're going to sign Marco Fugar. I think that ship has sailed. I think he needs to look for other options. Brandon Honorable, I don't know. There's some academic issues. I don't know how that's going to work out. The two offensive line prospects, but they still got a lot of offensive line recruits in this class, plus a transfer. Scroll down here. Dale Gribble, my goal for the team next year is finishing in the top 25. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good goal. Something to shoot for. Absolutely. TRR, I wonder if Leslie Smith has a future at Pitt. Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of Leslie Smith because he didn't play this year. He was hurt all season. Got on the field a little bit as a freshman last year in 2019, but didn't play at all in 2020 due to injury. I'm not sure how he fits into that equation. I look at those other guys and I see guys who can really make a lot of I see guys who have shown what they can do on the field. And I don't know what Smith can do. Let's see here. Brock Madonic says, do you know if Trey Tipton is returning to Pitt for another year? Yeah, I think he is. I think he's coming back for year 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Year 7. Year 7 for Trey Tipton. Hey, good for him, man. Kudos for him. Congratulations to Trey. He's a great kid. He's a great representative of Pitt. Stay as long as you want, man. He's a great guy. Love Trey. Let's see here. Dale Gribble, do you see any of our players going in the first round of the draft? Probably not. It seems like the second round might be where you find like Patrick Jones or Rashad Weaver. I think Jalen Twyman with a great combine can play himself into the second round. Paris Ford, I think, would need to test really, really well. I'm not sure if any of those guys can, maybe like a Jones or a Weaver can use the combine and test themselves into the first round. But otherwise, I'm not so sure. I think you'll see a lot of action like second, third, fourth round. I think that's where you're going to see, most of those guys, Twyman, Jones, Weaver, Ford. I think you'll see those guys go in that second through fourth round. Somewhere in there seems about right. All right, we'll finish on this. Brock Madonic, thank you for reminding me of this. Jordan Addison posted on Instagram last night a picture with him and Kenny Pickett stating, we have unfinished business. So that seems like a pretty good indicator that Jordan Addison's not going anywhere. And thank you, Brock, for posting that. I'll be honest, I shortly before the new year decided I was going to I took Instagram and Facebook off my phone. So I still have the accounts. I haven't deleted my account or anything like that, but I took them off my phone because I was spending too much time on there. I was wasting too much time on there. So I haven't looked at Instagram to see that, but I appreciate you sharing it to keep us posted on that. So Jordan Addison, he'll be back as a sophomore. I don't know if he's going to win the Heisman, but he'll be back as a sophomore. All right, listen, I got to tell you, go to the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Love our conversations here on Tuesday nights during the live stream. It's a lot of fun. I always enjoy this. I always look forward to it. It's a fun way to kill an hour on a Tuesday night, if you enjoy it too, you got to go check out the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. I mean, we report on it all: football, basketball, recruiting. But we also have the message boards where we have these kinds of conversations. The things we're talking about on this podcast, we have these conversations all day, every day at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. You got to go check it out. We'd love to have you join the site and get in on the conversation. Also, definitely you got to go check out homefieldapparel.com. It's awesome stuff. Great sweatshirts and T-shirts. Great, just high-quality gear. If you like college sports gear, college logos and whatnot, vintage throwback stuff on a high-quality T-shirt, high-quality sweatshirt, and logos and designs and graphics that are really inspired by the histories of the schools. It's not just some generic stuff. It's, this Hawaii Rainbow Warriors sweatshirt. This is authentic. This has the real vibe to it. So homefieldapparel.com. Make sure you go check that out. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in on the live stream here on Tuesday night. Thanks for listening to the podcast during the week. Remember, Saturday mornings, 8 a.m., 93.7 The Fan. We have the Panthers Insider Show, so you can tune in for more Pitt sports talk there. But the place to go is Panther-Lair.com. Panther-Lair.com. That's the website. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. We had a lot of fun. We'll be back next Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m., right here on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com, talking more Pitt sports on the Panther-Lair Show. Have a great week until then. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you next Tuesday.